a lot of folks face lonely moments. And sometimes you don't have anybody to talk to. You don't have any connection that will get you through the darkness. So the concept was like, what if we build this podcast and create a platform and a community where we can connect individuals to meet people that are going to support them, right? And like cheer them on and show up for them, not only in like the physical world, but like, you know, online, because we do a lot of things online, right? If you have a business, if you're creative, whatever, like you have to live online too.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Film Goals Podcast. Today, I'm with the one and only Sandy York. Thanks for coming in the podcast. This is our first time outside of my home studio. So thank you, Sandy, for inviting me out here. Yes. We're coming live from the 11th Street Studio Records, 11th Street Records downtown.
Yes.
Fremont, dope ass place. So yeah, Sandy, you are a podcaster, but you started off as a banker.
Yes.
And I really like your story of you've done this for so long, this banking stuff, which I want to learn about. But then you decided like, oh, I want to be creative, and you figured it all out. Like you figured out the sound, the mic, the video, and editing, and it's impressive. So I just kind of let's start at the beginning with like your day job, like how you start, like what you do for your day job, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I started, God, it's really going to age me, but
you don't have to tell years. You don't have to say dates.
Okay. No dates. No. Well, I've been in the banking industry for 20 years. I started as a teller many, many moons ago. And then, you know, I bought into that story of like, well, you know, you grow up, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you get a mortgage, and then you die, you know? So after I hit my 40s, it just hit me like a bucket of cold water. And I realized that has never been what I truly wanted. Not that I didn't want those things, but like I was just following a programming. So everybody went through something during the pandemic, right? Like we all had those hard moments. And that's really where the podcast, the Power of Connection podcast grew from. And it flourished into what is now a year later. So happy about that. Yeah. But you're right. Like I went through the process of like going to YouTube University and like trying to learn audio and video and how, you know, what, like I kid you not, like before that I had no knowledge of like how many different adapters there are. And now I think I own every single one. Like I have an inventory of adapters and cords. But now I nerd out on that stuff. I really do enjoy what I do. But yeah, the banking industry, 20 years.
So I don't know anything about banking.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you did or what you still do. And like, how can I get some money? Right?
Like, how can we get some funding? So yeah, I started as a teller, like I said before. I was a personal banker for a while. So I think that's where like the love of like small business grew for me, because I would talk to small business owners and then I would learn about their industry. And, you know, it's being a personal banker, and now they're called relationship managers in today's age. They really do ask questions to understand the business and what they do on their day to day, you know, how they receive payments, how they, you know, everything. So I think that interview process wasn't as much of a challenge for me because I've been doing it for so long, as far as like getting to know people and understand their businesses. And since my podcast is around small business and creatives and all that, like I'm genuinely just really curious. But yeah, I did that. And currently I'm a compliance officer. So what I do is I review federal regulations. This is not exciting stuff, folks. I review federal regulations, and then I go into different parts of the bank. And I test to see if we're following the laws. And sometimes it's not necessarily that we may not be following the laws, but like in banking, there's a lot of scrutiny, right? So we have a lot of programs and policies and procedures, like everything you can think of has a procedure. So then I go in and test all those things to make sure that we don't have gaps, so that things are not broken, or if we do have gaps, how do we fix it, right? We bring solutions to the table. So that's what I currently do.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I've never gotten into the banking thing. Math is not my, obviously. Do you do a lot of math?
No.
Oh, okay.
Math is not my thing either.
Oh, okay.
But I am an accounting major, so that's interesting to be, yeah.
So I'm interested, what was the first thing? Obviously, like I told you, we just finished doing your podcast, and I really liked the name because we found each other on Instagram, and the Power of Connection is like such a powerful name. How did the idea spark? And then what was the first step that you took?
Yeah. So the Power of Connection, grew from two people who really needed each other during the pandemic and helped each other get through like one of the hardest times in our society. I don't know about like anybody else, but like I had really a lot of moments where I had to reflect on who I was, and like I was in a job that I didn't love at the time. It wasn't with the same company I am now, but like it was a different company, and what they were doing during that time was very awful. And I had to eventually leave that job because it was just detrimental to my mental health. So I found solace in, a connection that helped just be there for me. And I feel like I think I did the same. And it really grew from that. Like a lot of folks face lonely moments. And sometimes you don't have anybody to talk to. You don't have any connection that will get you through the darkness. So the concept was like, what if we build this podcast and create a platform and a community where we can connect individuals to meet people that are going to support them, right? And like cheer them on and show up for them, not only in like the physical world, but like, online, because we do a lot of things online, right? If you have a business, if you're creative, whatever, like you have to live online too.
Yeah.
So we met a lot of cool people like that. And we're actively supporting each other. And I think we share that too, right? So that's really what the meaning behind the name. Sorry, it was so long-winded.
That's a great answer. Great name. So yeah, what was your first step since you were, how creative were you before doing this? Like, were you into like creative things? Did you do any like, any stuff outside of like your day job? And then what was the first step you took to make the podcast happen?
Yeah. So I always say that I'm a creative living in a banker's body, because I've always been creative my whole life. Like I love business. Like I love the concept of like having an idea and executing that idea. Like that gets me going in the morning. So I've always been creative. I've started different businesses from like the beginning to like operations. And especially since my background is in operations, it comes so easy to me. But that creative part is like what really drives me.
Okay.
My first creative, let me go back. I feel like I've always had this even as a little girl, even though like I went so traditional. It's only recently, maybe since 2018, that it has really like escaped me because I couldn't control it anymore. I just had it go and just create stuff, for myself. And that's where I'm at right now. So now I'm just like uncovering new worlds every day. Yeah.
So what did you do first? I know you say you went to YouTube, but like, what was the first thing you were like, I gotta figure out how to even record audio? Did you have any like concept of this before?
No, I had no idea of anything. I just said one day I'm going to be a podcaster, and then I just am a podcaster. And it's so funny because there's so much post and pre
Yeah.
and post there
Mhm.
is like the hardest parts. Like the recording sessions are actually
This is the fun part.
yeah, this is good time.
Actually, it was all fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I had like the very first thing, like there was already some people in the field that I was following that are creatives, but they're also business owners. So I would just follow their YouTubes and watch their stuff. And like at first I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, because there's always like that thought, like you have to escape what you are to become something else. And a lot of people, like your immediate family, your friends, they only know you a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like I had to escape that persona of like, oh, this is Sandy. She's in banking. This is who so-and-so, right? Mm-hmm. So when I ventured out, of course, there were some raised eyebrows, like you're in banking, the most conservative thing ever. You work for a bank. Like, what are you doing trying to be a creative? You know, like you look silly.
Wow.
So I had to just shut the noise down and just move forward. So like, yeah, I followed creatives, and then I started learning about like podcasts. And like when you get into podcasts, you go through all the channels of like, okay, what mic do I get? Like what stand? Like what camera? Blah, 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 blah. And then like you get lost in that world. But I think the most important part is just starting. Even if you start out crappy, like I think that's the biggest challenge to overcome is just hit record on, even if nobody's going to see it. Yeah. If you just record yourself to get over that mind of like being scared about it. That was like the hardest part. And watching myself on camera, like when we actually went into the studio the very first time, that was scary too. I'm like, I don't like my voice. I don't like how I look on camera. And then I had to think, okay, well, why are you doing it? It's not about me. It's about, it really isn't. It's about like who I'm talking to. Yeah. So like that was like, repurposing or rethinking about like, why are you doing this? To it's not about you, it's about your guests and what can I learn, right? Like what can I learn today? And like like the value you're going to provide, I'm going to get to have that. It's a gift. It really is a gift. So that kind of let everything else just go silent and just let me move forward.
That's great. I think that's definitely a hump you have to get over, because it was the same thing for me. I was like, man, I don't want to. Nobody likes their voice. Nobody likes how they look on camera. I used to like be on camera, like acting, not really act. Like I don't consider myself an actor, but I was like, I'll act on my friends short or whatever. And then I was like, man, I can't look at myself. So I stopped. I was like, that's not for me. But then like the podcast stuff is just having a conversation and it's like, it's chill. Everyone has different styles of how they do their podcast. Yep. For me, it's just, I just want to have a conversation. And like you said, I just want to learn and take that value that people bring, to the table, I guess.
Yeah.
And tell me about editing, because you edit everything. So we came in here, we both set up. Yeah. And you set up your own stuff, your own gear, and then you set up your own microphones, and then you edit it. So how did you jump into that?
Yeah. So for editing, I did invest in courses, because for me, like you can definitely learn things for free on the internet, but there's times where you have to invest in yourself. So I invested in courses, and like I learned what I liked, what I didn't like, and I learned what I didn't know. Because a lot of it, when you're getting into something, is like you just don't know, right? And if you have a fresh mind and there is not convoluted with all these things, it's easier for you to like move quicker, because then you just get the actual information and it's a streamlined process, and then you can like watch, practice, and then implement. So it was a lot of that, and a lot of like trying it out and failing. Like there's a big part of like, there's tons of time. There was one time I forgot to record myself altogether. Like it does happen. Yeah. There's times where like the audio is shit, and you're like, oh my God, like, in those moments, you just have to take the hits and like, just keep on going.
And you recorded on video, but you haven't gotten to releasing your videos yet.
Yeah.
Is that something you're like, are you learning how to edit video too?
Yeah. So I'm teaching myself how to edit video, and it's a process for sure. And I do eventually want to release all my catalog in YouTube. The plan was to hit our 1 year and then go live in YouTube, but we've had a couple hurdles. But that's still the plan.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm curious, what courses did you take?
Ooh, Anthony Gallo, I think it was one.
Online.
Okay. Yeah. So he's a filmmaker, and his course actually has a lot of it covers all the from the top, like what gear to have, or like options on gear, right? Because gear itself, it has different, like you can start beginner, intermediate, and then advanced. So like it gives you a lot of different options, and then it actually like walks you step by step on like editing in Premiere Pro or DaVinci or Final Cut. So like it has the three. If I edit in Premiere Pro, so like I'm just going through a process of like learning, short keys, like that alone, right? Yeah. Like that alone is valuable, because I'm like, okay, select, cut, remove, drag, and like you could do it in two shortcuts, and then but I'm like doing the 10 steps,
Right, yeah. I think once you figure that out, it'll save you a lot of time.
Yeah,
that's sure. That's how you're supposed to edit, just with the keys. So I'm curious, like, how do you find time? Because it seems like, I don't know, to me, it seems like banking is like a stressful job. I don't know how stressful it is.
It's stressful.
How do you find the time? And you're also a mom, right?
Yes.
So how do you find the time to do all these things and learn and make it happen?
Yeah, it's, I have a very understanding support system. But it's, to me, like, I don't believe in like the whole work-life balance situation. I think that what you really want, like, you can have it all, but just not at the same time. Right. So there's times where like I'm working 12, 14-hour days. Like I'll do my day job, and after work, I'll have dinner, and then I'll sit in a computer like 5-6 hours. It's not glamorous. Like it's literally like you have to put in the hours. So what I do is like I'll schedule days for like editing. So like they'll know like I try to publish my episodes on Wednesday. So so I'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm editing. And then there's like certain days that I just, like Sundays are my non-negotiables, like, right. That's like my family day. Saturdays and Sundays, but sometimes I have to work Saturdays, right, to keep it going. But I do separate the different parts of my life to make sure that I'm visiting each section. And there's times where like, I just will go on strike and I will do nothing podcast and just binge watch TV. Like I do binge, like I know we talked about that, but that's because at that point I have unbalanced myself, and I need to come back to myself and recenter and then go back out. Yeah.
You need a break sometimes.
Yeah.
It's, it can get very repetitive, and then you're just kind of like a grind, and it becomes a grind, and it's like, well, let's reset.
Yeah.
No, for sure. So what kind of, I know you have a lot of female guests because you're a woman podcast, supporting other women and stuff in the community. Talk a little bit about the guests you bring in, and like, what do you guys talk about? Yeah.
So I myself am a big advocate for women, empowering women. I'm actually the president of the Las Vegas International Association of Women. So with that role, primarily, like, I do seek out other women entrepreneurs and try to give them a platform for them to voice their experience, right? But we also have a lot of male guests because believe it or not, like a lot of the support that I receive have been from men, like just my male counterparts, or like just like them cheering me on and like, you could do it, like it's okay, like and they're so helpful, like they're out to help, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, so we have a little bit of both, because I think it's important to hear both voices, right? But with IAW, we do try to, seek out people that we can collaborate, because that's really what we want to build, is a community of women that can collaborate together and can support each other. And ultimately, with the Power of Connection podcast, it's the same thing, like building a community of like just people that want to work together and create projects and, collaborate and support each other.
Yeah. And so you're very involved in the community. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Like, you were in LA and then moved here when you were after high school. What made you move to Vegas?
I ran away.
From who?
Oh my God. Okay. So I graduated high school. I was 17 years old, and I packed my cheerleader bag and I told my parents, my very conservative Mexican parents, I'm moving out. And they're like, "You're what?" Yeah, I'm moving out. What? Where? I'm like, I'm going to go to Vegas. And they're like, what? You're crazy. Somehow I convinced them. I moved out here and I stayed with my aunt for 1 week. I couldn't. Then I stayed with a different relative. And in that first week, I enrolled myself in college, got a job, and got a bus pass. And that's how my life started in Vegas. I was here by myself, 17 years old, one duffel bag. And I knew nothing about life because I came from a very conservative household, and everything that was ever taught to me was not necessarily accurate. So I had to reteach myself a lot of things about life and how to survive here as a 17-year-old female, and keep myself safe, feed myself, house myself. So I think that journey really taught me a lot.
Damn. That's what made you strong.
Yes, for sure.
That's crazy. Ran away from parents.
Yeah. But if you were to ask me now with my daughter, like, no way. There's no way you're going to Vegas by yourself. Are you crazy?
That's crazy. Why made you choose Vegas?
I had an aunt here, and my parents always talked about moving to Vegas. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm just going to go. And then if you want to follow, like, meet me there. Eventually they did move out here. But yeah, they always talked about Vegas. I was tired of California because I wanted something different. And being that I had visited here and had family here, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so you're pretty much like native because you came when you were a teen.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
That's cool. So with the women group that you're a president of, like, what kind of stuff do you guys do? Do you guys hold events? Do you like help small, like, what is exactly that you guys do?
Yeah, so we hold monthly events. Right now we're gearing up to plan the rest of the year out. And what we do is we like to hold either educational events, panel discussions. We do host mixers so people can just come and meet each other and, hang out. But there's also like an online community to it. So the association is actually international. We have a group in London. That's what makes us international. I'm like, where's Mexico? Like, can we? You
gotta find someone in Mexico.
Yeah, we gotta.
And
we
Guatemala
gotta.
too.
Yes, and what we got? Yes, we're gonna go. Yeah, but we do have the in-person community and then an online community. And through the online community, you have like the women have access to all the members across all the states. So we're in all major states. I think we have like 2 or 3 different chapters in California alone because it's so big, and Texas too has a couple of chapters.
Have you been to London?
I have not.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Oh, you gotta go.
Not yet.
You're the vice president, right?
I'm the president. Of Las Vegas. I'm the president of Las Vegas.
There has to be a meeting in London and all the presidents.
All the presidents. Let's go. Let's get together.
Dope.
Yeah.
Cool. So, the Power Connection podcast. What do you guys talk about in the podcast, and what do you want to highlight in it?
So the Power of Connection podcast, we talk about connection and the connection with yourself, your purpose, and your community. So it's really, we talk about the stories of like, depending on the industry that our guest is in, like what connects them to that industry and what connects them to themselves. Because I think the most important relationship anybody could have is with themselves, because that's the lens that they see the world through. So we love to hear those stories about, what makes them, and like how they're functioning in the world and what they're doing. Like, we just love learning about people.
Yeah. A few of them get emotional from the ones that I've heard. There's like some emotional ones.
Yeah.
The one with the divorced person, that one was... Yeah, that was deep. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's real talk.
Real
like,
life,
there has been tears that have been shed. And sometimes I get emotional because like things about me come out that I don't necessarily share on the day to day. And then it comes out just because we're in conversation and, but then I learn about myself. I'm like, oh, is that still bugging me or am I over it?
It's therapy.
Yeah.
It's like a form of therapy.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's funny because when I was on social media looking at your stuff, I was like, is she Latina? Is she Filipina? Like I was trying to figure it out because York, I didn't know York was York. Where's that from? That's your husband, right?
Yeah, that's my husband's. I don't know.
What's his background?
They're mixed. So they're Irish and something else. I don't know. So
it's probably like an Irish last name.
So a lot of people don't know. Like,
so I was trying to figure out like if you were Latina or not. And then as I started listening to the podcast, I started getting more like about you. Yeah. So then when I came in here, I was like, I felt like I knew you. Yeah. Because I was listening to your background. And then this last one that you did, you talked a little bit more about your background and kind of like your relationship with your family and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
I get that. At first glance, people never know.
Yeah. But that's also the cool thing about the podcast, that you can start to learn about people outside of just like what you see on their social media.
Absolutely.
It gets deeper,
Yeah. And you find out there's so many layers, right? Because in social media, there's only certain things that we're portraying.
Exactly.
Right. But when in person, like I feel the same way. Like I feel we're just buddies, like hanging out, right? Like it doesn't feel like today's the first time we physically met. I feel like we've just known each other. Yeah.
Cool. So what's in the future for the podcast or anything else that you're doing creative for you?
Yeah. So the podcast, we're going to continue on doing the podcast. We still want to capture all the stories. We might take a little break to just rework some things behind the scenes. And then we do want to launch on YouTube. That's a big goal of mine. So we do want to do that. And then just more of community building and hopefully more collaborations on like how we can build the Las Vegas community here in town stronger. And I do want to do a lot of work with our Hispanic Latino community here in town. So there has been some conversations with other collaborators on like, how do we make that happen? So yeah, that's what's ahead.
If you need anything, let me know.
Of course. Yes, you know it.
All right. Well, thank you, Sandy, for being here. The Power Connection podcast. I'm going to leave her info below and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Peace.